Lemon Amiga present a Playguide video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hey there, welcome to another Amiga game guide and review. In this week's episode, we'll be checking out the Lost Vikings, developed by Silicon and Synapse and released by Interplay in 1993. At the beginning of the game, we are introduced to the three lead characters, group of Vikings from Norway known as Eric the Swift, Olaf the Stout, and of course Baliog the Fierce. Upon pressing fire on the start menu, we can check out the animation which opens the game and introduces those three characters, and from here we can also check out a few of their skills. For example, Olaf has a huge great shield and he can use that to protect himself against all enemies. The aim of the Lost Vikings is to guide these three bumbling heroes from one end of a level to the other, from the entrance to the exit, using all of their available skills at your disposal. Having made it through a level, we reach some kind of destination, and in this case it's our home village, with our wives and our sons there ready to be rewarded with a family meal. I love the introduction music, and I love this great introduction itself. It really opens up this game and gives it that bouncy atmosphere that we really need from a great game. Unfortunately, one evening late at night they were attacked whilst they were asleep, apparently, by the evil Tomator, and he was a Praetorian leader who arrived in his spaceship through the vortex, and he drew all of those guys up through his force field into his great spaceship, and from there, unfortunately, they'll have to escape and try to make their way back to this village at the end of the game. And that's where we come in at the beginning of level 1. First of the 37 levels in the Lost Vikings opens pretty easily. All we have to do is to guide those guys to the exit, and once we find that exit we can also be given a number of keys to press. If we press the Del and the Help key, we can move between those guys, and by pressing the fire button we can toggle the primary attack. In this case, Olaf has a shield which we can raise and lower by pressing that fire button. Eric can jump by pressing that fire button, and Baliog can actually use his sword using that fire button. but we only have 3 units of energy per guy, and once those 3 units of energy are used up, then unfortunately we'll have to use some more. You can see we collected a tomato, or at least Eric has, and we can use those to top up our energy as we move through this game. Also have a small inventory. Each character can hold 4 items at any given time, and by pressing the tab key we can select that, and we can even give that item to another character if that other character is standing by, and that means that we can swap and use items at our own discretion, and by pressing the E key when that thing is highlighted, then we can use that. But for the moment we have all the energy that each character can handle, and look, another tomato, and even a helpful guide. By pressing the S key next to signs and switches we will toggle those, and so there are a few keys that the player has to memorise at the beginning of the game to get the most out of it, and all those keys will be used later on, and we'll have to use those in pretty rapid succession sometimes, but at this stage the game is simply getting the player used to these levels and all the tactics that they need to employ to get through them. Pressing the S key we can then activate each character's secondary weapon. In this case Balo can use his bow and arrow against those enemies, and those can travel a huge distance, and if we happen to be Eric and press the S key we can ram into walls and destroy things. But I don't think Olaf has a special weapon, but I could be wrong on that. It's been some time since I played this game, and as you can see it's a pretty old rip as well. On each level we'll also find special items. Some of those can destroy the aliens, and some of those can destroy the installations that we need to get further in this game, and in this case we've uncovered a number of bombs which we can give to any character, and it's important to give the appropriate character those bombs because sometimes only one character can get into an appropriate situation. For the moment let's just pile everybody onto this elevator and move down to a lower platform, and there are elevators and teleports and special items as we shall see a little later on. Great that at this point this game opens up very gradually so that anybody of any age can get into this very slowly, and they can take their time because there is no time limit, but unfortunately there is no score either. The object is to simply get through these levels. We have infinite lives as well, so there is no point worrying about lives. We can retry these levels an infinite amount of time, and when we begin a new level we'll be given a password which allows us to access that game from where we left off. Having been given some helpful advice, let's just get rid of this computer with our bomb. Praetorian security, you can see, is represented by a number of animals, and they will not attack us directly. They will hang around the screen and they can be avoided, and they can be taken on by the appropriate guy. And the novelty of this game, of course, is to use the appropriate guys in any given situation. And so, just like Lemmings, we'll have to move through these levels very slowly at first by trial and error. On the Amiga, you can see we found our first anti-gravity elevator, and that will hopefully get us up this level. And any character can fly on this anti-gravity, doesn't have to be Olaf, but I'm using Olaf basically to block the enemy, and then I can send Balog or Balog perhaps in there and destroy that enemy. And yes, you can do multiple things at the same time in this game, simply swapping between those characters. I find it's always best to send Olaf in front unless you need Eric as a scouting party, but Eric can get defeated pretty quickly, and so sometimes it's best to transfer all the food over to Eric. Like you can see at the moment, he has 2 items of food which will restore 2 items of energy should we really need to use those, and we have 1 bomb remaining should we need to use that as well. The logic involved is very straightforward, and there are no hidden puzzles to work out, no hidden rooms either, and so the player can make their way from the beginning to the end pretty quickly. It's certainly only 5 or 10 minutes to play through each level, and with infinite lives on offer we can play that over and over until we get that right. But if we take our time, it does reward the player by getting through the levels pretty quickly, and it's a great feeling to complete a level first time of approaching that, simply getting through those enemies. A little bit gung-ho, but getting through to that exit is usually no problem. These levels aren't massive, and so it won't take all night to get through those, and it doesn't patronise the player with things which are simply too hard. Much of the humour comes between the banter of the 3 guys, and if you fail a level often enough, they will come out with a mysterious argument between each other, and sometimes it's best to fail a level a number of times so that you can see all those hidden texts which are buried within this game of those guys really ripping into each other, and it's that comic humour which makes this game great. If only that had been added a little more during the gameplay, perhaps as they passed each other on the corridor. But at the beginning of each level we do get some banter between the elements, and during the level itself we do get some interaction with a number of aliens. Again, I must apologise for this awful jittering on this rip. It was ripped at 60 frames per second, but unfortunately quite some time ago, and you can see the sound has been deteriorated as well, so I've had to boost that sound. But the levels themselves are usually very smooth, and this game runs in 16 colour mode. There is no 32 colour mode in this game, unfortunately, but those 16 colours have been used to great effect. Just like rough and tumble, all we need to open a door is the appropriate key of the right colour. And I noticed that Olaf has that key, and so all we'll need to do is get him into that teleporter, and of course we can talk to these aliens in the meantime and try to get some more story out of this game. Apparently the evil Tomator is the Praetorian leader, and he's smothered the galaxy trying to find aliens for his zoo. And this zoo that we're in at the moment is home to us. We are the 3 aliens from the planet Earth, and it's our job to get back to that planet Earth using those keys. So let's switch back to our stout character and make our way up there, and it's great that all these characters can survive any fall unless they fall onto spikes or electricity or fall into water, but that's another great touch. It means that we don't have to use the great floating abilities of Olaf all of the time, and we can send those guys off ledges without having to worry about damage. See, on the Amiga we no longer have the bomb from the previous level, and so any energy has to be used up on the previous level before we move on to the next one, and any items collected will disappear from our inventory. So if you have those, it's best to use those and use those up on any given level. You can see, just like many ZX Spectrum games, this is a simple platformer underneath, and it won't take as long to move through this simple platformer and collect these items. That cross you can see at the moment is actually a smart bomb, and we can use that to get rid of some of these androids which are blocking our way, but let's just save that smart bomb for now, and let's save that for when we really need it. From here, it's only a short hop to the end of that level. Unfortunately, if we collide with those enemies, then those enemies will not die. You physically have to remove those with the warrior, and then you can progress, or you can use the smart bomb, of course. But again, those items will not maneuver onto the next level, so it's best to use those up. And as we are right at the end of the level, getting rid of that last alien, it would make sense to use that and simply get through that the easy way. Game was developed by Silicon and Synapse, and it was their first full game on the Amiga, and it was actually a conversion from the original Lost Vikings, which appeared and was developed for the Super Nintendo. Silicon and Synapse was founded in 1991 in Irvine, California by two programmers, Eamon Adam and Michael Muirheim, and they met up with Brian Fargo, who was the CEO and founder of Interplay Entertainment, and through Brian they founded this division of Interplay, which was responsible for a number of ports earlier on, including ports of Battle Chess and Lexicross. Castles arrived in 1991, which was ported onto the Amiga, and even Amiga Baseball. But the first collaboration with Interplay directly happened in 1993 with this game. And in the same year they also published Rock and Roll Racing as well on a PS1, and that gave them the credit of being awarded Developer of the Year. In February of 1994, they changed their name to Blizzard Entertainment, and that's probably where you know them from. They went on to create many games, including, of course, the Diablo series, the World of Warcraft series, and StarCraft as well, and Blizzard Entertainment are, of course, still in the business. Why the executive producer of this game was a certain Brian Fargo, who started out with games such as Bard's Tale and moved on to producing Neuromancer, Battle Chess, Dragon Wars and Castles on the Amiga, which appeared in 1991. The original SNES coders included Eamon Alan Adam, Michael Muirheim, and the first employee of Synapse, which was another programmer, Frank Pierce. The Amiga conversion was handled by James Edward Anholt III, and he went on to Muppet Treasure Island in 1996, and games like Diablo 3, World of Warcraft and StarCraft 2, which appeared in 2013. Graphics were originally drawn by Joey Ray Hall, Stuart Rose, Ronald Miller and Sam Didier, and the music to the Lost Vikings was created by Alistair Brimble and Charles Deenan. Many of those guys, including all the graphics artists and the lead coders, of course, went on to all of the Blizzard games, including Warcraft, which appeared in 94, Warcraft 2 in 95, Diablo appeared in 1996, StarCraft in 98, Warcraft 3 in 2002, That led on to World of Warcraft, and lastly StarCraft 2 again in 2013. And so Blizzard Entertainment have a massive legacy not only on the PC machines but also with this one game on the Amiga. On the Amiga, it seems like that we are between a rock and a hard place, and having our characters destroyed like that means it's game over, and we can also escape at any time and retry this level at any time. But if we lose all those characters, they will be restored as we look at a ship departing over the Baltic Sea, and unfortunately that is not us. We have to try this level again until we get through it. Retry and fail aspect isn't so bad, because usually on the second attempt the player will usually discover the error of their ways and try to be a bit more careful, but it means that there are no save points and waypoints to go back to, which is a little bit of a shame, but it means that we can try these levels over and over again, and usually once we've got through a level and gained that password, written that down, then there is no reason to ever go back to this level. So once you get through a level, it means that that's it. You never have to play that again. At this point, I'd just like to mention that the music is exceptional in this game. This game came on 2 discs, and the music is really terrific. It really adds to the atmosphere. Of course, there is space music, but later on there is also forest music. We move on to an Egyptian world with suitably music, and a mechanical world as well. And there are 5 worlds in this game, and the final section will take us back to the ship, and we'll have to defeat Tomator himself before landing back on the planet Earth. On the poster art, your voyage to an incredible adventure through time. So this game fits in with our time travel element, and it also is a great element to have in any computer game to move through different lands and different periods of time. Lost Vikings actually came back in the game known as Norse by Northwest, the Return of the Lost Vikings, which appeared in 1997, which appeared on the PC machines, the PS1, the SNES and the Saturn, and the game also had a slight comeback in one of the levels of the World of Warcraft adventure. World of Warcraft in 2004 presented a level known as the Lost Dwarves, and in that the 3 characters, Olaf, Eric and Baliog, appeared from the Lost Vikings as a cameo. And I think it's great that in the later games the Lost Vikings still appear, and that Blizzard Entertainment haven't lost their heritage. On the Amiga, you can see after a number of levels have been completed, then that will take us on to the next section of levels via a warp, and the warp vortices door, you can see, has a nice warp effect on the door, and so all we have to do is to get there, and all 3 Vikings have to make it to that spot. In this case, I like to use Eric and use the screen scrolling mechanic to get an arrow flying in the direction of those aliens, and that means that we can get rid of those the easy way. Of course, Olaf can march straight through those, and Balog can actually fire arrows through those, but in this case I'm actually choosing to do this the long way, just to make sure that I can get this level in the back. It appears that we've been transported back to a prehistoric world, but because Tomato is a collector of odd creatures throughout the universe, then perhaps this is simply another part of his ship. The aliens on offer don't really vary, and you can see a harmless alien there, but if we hit that alien from the very front, which looks oddly like a snail, then we can get rid of that. But the first attacking alien appears in the form of a very well animated dinosaur, and so perhaps we have moved back in time after all. Apart from the music, there is very few sound effects in this game, and I think that there are extra elements added with 1 megabyte of memory. In fact, some people claim that this game actually requires 1 megabyte of chip RAM just to run it, but as far as I know, you can run this with half a megabyte. It's just that it won't have all the music and the sound effects perhaps, but perhaps it does need 1 meg of memory to run. I certainly remembering this, and anybody who had a half meg chip RAM expansion who could make use of extra levels and extra sounds and extra music would be grateful for things like that. And don't forget, 1 megabyte of memory back in those days was an amazing amount, but right now 1 meg of memory is absolutely nothing, and 1 picture would probably not fit inside 1 meg of memory. Amiga, we have found another token, and that's a shield. What that will do is actually that will give us an extra point of energy, so we have 4 on whichever character that we use that on. And at this stage, unless we get ourselves into real trouble, the energy isn't the problem. It's simply the puzzle solving and trying to solve the puzzle of how to gain those items in the first place. You can see Eric has his pockets full at the moment, so I'm having to transfer some items around, and then I have enough room to collect the extra, but we don't really need the extra item, and it won't give us any points or score either. But let's just collect that for a little more prestige, and let's see if we need to use that later on. The music in this second world is once again very atmospheric and very well programmed, and to my mind this music actually reminds me of a prehistoric level more than many games on the Amiga, and that's why I chose this theme music to introduce the prehistoric games that we've seen already. We still have 1 or 2 prehistoric games still left to go, so maybe you'll get to hear that music all over again. Just like Syndicate that we reviewed, swapping items between all our friendlies is an essential operation to perform. Using all the skills of our squad together and grouping those is an essential operation in itself, and using the team tactic is never more important. Although the animations are limited, I think there is some great animation on the main characters, and even though these graphics are pretty blocky, it's certainly a step up from some games that we've played on the Amiga, and using all these characters in all these different formations is unique, and all these levels and graphics do change periodically, so you can see that the format has changed. We can still see some fossils in the rocks, but this time they are all purple, and it gives us an even greater feeling of being prehistoric. Having said that, you can definitely say that the game Prehistoric was drawn a little better than this, and we have seen better graphically drawn games on the Amiga, so liberties were taken to compromise between this and the DOS versions and the version which was released on the Super Nintendo. You can see, comparing a few of those screenshots now, there are many differences, but basically the core mechanics of this game is a teamwork operation. Well, it's a bit like Lemmings, only you only have 3 guys to control, and getting those in the right order and in the right places is the order of the day.
Kick it.
If you copy this game, or if you play the cracked version, then the title music will change and it will say cheat all over it as you play that title music, and many ADFs that you can get on the internet these days actually include the cheat music as you load up the game. But if you have the original on disc, it isn't actually supposed to say that, and well, we are actually using a copy on the WHD load that we're using right now. Luckily, those passwords are only 4 digits long. No, we don't have to make sure that we enter a telephone directory, not like the codes for Lemmings particularly, but having 3 codes, and many of those codes are actually easy to remember. It makes this a very easy experience, and sometimes you can have fun moving from level to level and even replaying levels all over again. Levels progress, we find sometimes the routes diverge, and sometimes only one character can go one route at a time, and you can see in this case that Eric is the only one who can jump onto these platforms, so surely this is the way to go on this chocolate candy level. Also find extra things like bubble elevators as well, and we'll have to time those to get through those, and we will make use of bubble elevators later on. You can see those lethal spikes will remove an entire life very quickly, and you can see roving enemies at this point moving around that screen, so you can always count on those enemies to follow a predefined pattern. Think at this point that the level is over, but I'm not quite sure about that. There is a teleport here which looks a little like Mr. Blobby, and you can see a moving platform that only we can jump onto, so it must be possible to get these characters down to this space some way. You can see by using yet again that screen moving mechanic that we need a red key to move one of our characters along, and that red key is being protected by this guy, who we would probably be better off firing a bow and arrow from a long distance, otherwise we'd get killed. You can see a long list of the passwords available in this game, and the passwords are great, so let's just quit that level and let's just watch our character respawn again, and let's just try a different one. On to a later level, it's another scenario, it's another theme, and it's also a very difficult puzzle to try and press this button and try and get yourself out of trouble. Having accomplished that to open the door, sometimes it's very tricky to get the order of button presses in the right order, but you can see it is possible, even though it is tricky. Nothing is absolutely impossible to get your head around, and there are no impossible working out levels like Lemmings and things like that. Sometimes if we abandon the wrong character in the wrong place, then they can be vulnerable, and you can see this guy dive bombing us with bombs. If we leave that guy in the wrong place, we'll get hit, but don't forget we'll have to get Baelog up here as well, using the same tactic, and if he gets hit too many times on the ascent, it means we are not going to have his skills for the rest of that level, which means we'll basically have to quit. But the great thing about this game is we can continue with the other characters, even though we have to rescue all three to progress, and that means hopefully that we can figure out how to get through these levels, and in this case we'll have to stand on top of that shield just to have enough height available to kill this alien. Controls are also intuitive and very responsive, and there is no lag to these controls, which makes this game even more brilliant, but the controls aren't amazingly agile, and that befits these characters sometimes. The fastest is of course Eric, who can get into all these ducts and all these hidden areas, and as I say, there are no really hidden areas in the entire game. Everything is more or less on the surface. You don't have to go around touching the edges of rooms and walk around corridors trying to find secret doors, but if you go down the wrong route, just like this, then you will die. You can see we can actually use a special item to kill that monster, and the big stake at the end gives us full health back. So this game does not take itself too seriously. In fact, the humour involved is great, and we can see special animations on the characters as they enter cranes. But being too gung-ho right at the end of that level, unfortunately it cost me a life, but as I say, we can progress with all the other characters, and all we need to do is to move slightly left from here to find the exit, and it would have been very easy to get through to the exit from here. So even though sometimes the puzzles are a little bit of a handful, the characters themselves aren't, and usually if the game kills the player, they usually know why, and they usually know how to avoid it very easily the next time. Using yet again another password, let's move on to the penultimate level, and we won't see the end of game boss unfortunately, but this is what you have to deal with on the penultimate level of the entire game, and Tomato from here is only just around the corner. Like Switchblade and maybe Switchblade 2, we'll find some scorpions on this level which will fire deadly balls towards us, and those objects, if we touch us, then we'll lose one item of health of course, and so lethal scorpions at this point aren't necessarily what we really want to find, and it means that we really need to protect ourselves because those objects can travel straight over the top of the shield, and so we cannot always protect ourselves with the shield facing forward or facing up to protect us. So let's just try to put that into use and try to get a guy up there to protect us anyway, and we're still going to need some kind of unlocking device to get us through that door in the first place. whilst we play some music from the Egyptian level, which we didn't actually get to see on this playthrough. I hope you can appreciate that the range of music is one of the standout points of this game, and certainly Alistair Brimble and Charles Didnt need a huge pat on the back for this, as well as their contribution to the Amiga scene. And that brings us rolling around to the scores. The Amiga Format magazine unfortunately gave this game the lowest score at 79% in issue 49, August 1993. That's even lower than the current Lemon Amiga score, who currently gave this 81%. Amiga Force gave the Lost Vikings 81%. Steel Amiga gave it 82. Amiga Computing gave this 84. Amiga Joker gave it 85. Amiga Style gave this game 87%. Amiga Power gave this a great 87%. The One gave it 90%. Amiga Action gave this 91, and that means the highest score goes to Amiga User International, who awarded this 94%. That means the average score is 8.5 out of 10. I have completed this game and I found it non-taxing and very rewarding and very jolly and funny all the way through, and so I'd heartily recommend this game on whatever platform you decide to play it on, but of course the Amiga version is most likely one of the best. Thank you for viewing another Lemon Amiga play guide and review. Hope to see you again in another play guide sometime soon. Thank you.